LeBron's complaining about officials. And Paul George last night's complaining, quote, we get officiated differently. And Westbrook, if you watch him, complains about everything. Everybody, even Steve Kerr's talking about the. Do we have the Steve Kerr bite? Steve Kerr, coach of the Warriors. Everybody's complaining about the officials. Here's Steve Kerr yesterday.
20 years ago, you were allowed to literally smack the shooter on the hand, and if it was after the release, it didn't matter, and you could run into the guy. You had Reggie Miller kicking people, and the refs didn't know who was fouling whom, and nobody ever called anything. And now there is a huge emphasis on protecting shooters. The players test the boundaries every single night, and they try to fool the refs. The one that you see all the time now is a player's dribbling with one hand. A guy, you can try to get your arm in to defend him, and the player uses the off arm to literally grab the defender and then flail and look like he's shooting the ball. But good luck trying to officiate that at full speed. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I just know I wouldn't want to be a ref.
You know what this feels like to me? Animosity and jealousy of James Harden of Houston, who gets 28% of his points at the free throw line. LeBron, there is a reason. Westbrook, there is a reason. Paul George, I love you, bro, but there is a reason you're not at the free throw line like James Harden. Because James Harden flails and sells his calls and is unorthodox and left-handed and has a herky-jerky start and stop motion. He gets to the free throw line because he is uniquely difficult to defend. Two players in my life have scored a ton of their points at the free throw line. Karl Malone, Utah Jazz, and James Harden, Houston. Do you really want me to believe that the NBA officials decided, we want to take this guy in the mountains in Utah, not Dr. J, not Michael Jordan, not Larry Bird, not Magic Johnson, we want to take this guy in small market Houston and just put him at the free throw line. And then they decide 20 years later, we want to take this guy, this left-handed guy in Houston with a beard, and we want to just put him at the free throw line. No, Karl Malone deserves credit for getting there. James Harden gets to the free throw line because he earns it. He's chunky. He's a lefty. He flails. He's clever. He's unorthodox. He starts and stops. This feels like a lot of animosity toward James Harden, who is the hands down, I know LeBron's 1A, MVP this year. 28% of his points at the free throw line. Everybody's complaining they're not getting this. Let me throw something else at you. There's an old baseball player named Rod Carew. Rod Carew was the best pure hitter I ever saw, along with Tony Gwynn, the late Tony Gwynn. Rod Carew never saw a called third strike, meaning the umpires respected Rod Carew so much, if Rod didn't swing on it, they didn't punch him out. They didn't strike him out. They knew that Rod knew his strikeout zone. He knew his zone better than the umpire did. So Rod Carew rarely saw a called third strike. Let me just throw this at you, and you're going to think this is unfair, but referees are human. That James Harden is one of the best shooting guards in my lifetime, and that referees know this. He's a pure shooter. I mean, he can literally sit at the free throw line or on three-point line and hit 28 out of 29 shots. Westbrook is not. Westbrook is more dynamic athletically. But the officials subconsciously believe that if James Harden, if you don't call the foul when it's close, they feel like they're taking points away from him because he's a great shooter who would make the shot. Referees feel like with Westbrook, he wouldn't make it anyway. He's not a very good shooter. I do think part of the equation why Westbrook doesn't get the calls and Harden does, now a lot of it because the way they play the game. Westbrook was 100 miles an hour to the basket. Harden is start, stop, herk, jerk, left-handed. He's got you off balance constantly. But I also think a component here is the Rod Carew factor, is that referees feel like Harden is so gifted as a shooter that if you don't call the borderline call, you're taking points away from him. With Westbrook, they don't feel the shot would have gone in anyway. The guy shot 26% in his last 3 games. So he's the Tasmanian devil, Westbrook. He's going 1,000 miles an hour. It wouldn't go in anyway. And I think there's a subconscious level working. But everybody now is complaining about free throws and lack thereof. Karl Malone and James Harden were uniquely built and designed and featured parts of their components to their game, which got them to the free throw line. Give them credit. Give Harden credit. He's got a weird style that is impossible not to make contact with. And man, does he sell it to the refs. Let me throw this out there as well. Reggie Bush this hour, NFL Combine starting up. I want to throw some numbers up with Lonzo Ball. I've always felt Lonzo Ball had three things working against him. His dad's a loudmouth. He's a Laker. I mean, a lot of people just want to hate the prestigious franchises. The Yankees, Real Madrid, Duke basketball. So his dad's not very likable to a lot of people. He's a Laker. And the expectations, Magic Johnson's got him in the Hall of Fame before he plays a game. But look at his first 23 games, and I've said this for years. When a kid breaks into the NBA game is so much faster than college basketball. You got to give a kid 2 to 3 months to just get up to speed to the NBA game. Lonzo was over his head. The game was way too fast. But in the last 15 games, Lonzo Ball's really good. 13 a game, 44%, 40% three-pointers. One of the better plus-minuses on the Lakers. The reason I didn't believe Lonzo Ball was a bust, I took out the fact that his dad's a loudmouth, he was a Laker, and I removed the expectations. He has 4 or 5 things going for him, which you can't deny. First of all, he's a 6'5.5" point guard. You cannot teach that, and he not only is long, but he uses his length very wisely. Secondly, he does have exceptional court vision. It's almost like Wayne Gretzky in hockey. He can see things develop a tick before other players can. I'm not sure you can teach that. Number 3 is, some people say he's too stoic. I would argue I don't want my point guard and my CEO yelling at people. He has got a very suppressed demeanor. He's never too high. He's never too low. He has an incredibly chill personality. I don't see it as a weakness necessarily. I think for a CEO, quarterback, and point guard, it may work to his advantage. Here's the other thing. Players like playing with him. You've gone to the Y. You've played basketball. High school, college, AAU, YMCA. Most guys go to the gym and don't pass. You could argue Lonzo is too pass first. Players like playing with Lonzo Ball. The Lakers are better when they play with Lonzo Ball. Not every basketball player, including Michael Jordan and Kobe, are fun to play with. They're not. Often the better the player, the more he shoots, the bigger the ego, the less fun he is to play with. So, listen, I don't think Lonzo has the athletic ability. He is not dynamic enough to be a superstar. But the kid can play. In his last 15 games, the numbers are real. The Lakers are good with him. He scores. He can shoot. He rebounds. And he sees the court. He's long. And guys in the league like playing with him.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.